You have a Notes app with 500 random snippets and a downloads folder that looks like a war zone.
You tell yourself you're saving it for later, but later never comes.
You're a digital hoarder, convinced that collecting information is the same as making progress. It's a quiet, heavy lie that clutters your path and slows down your life OS.
You don't need more storage. You need a filter that actually works.
Let's look at the logic of the para system. Chapter 1. The inbox is the most dangerous place in your digital world because it feels like work. You dump a video link or a finance idea there, and your brain gives you a tiny hit of dopamine. You feel like you did something, but you actually just moved the mess from your head to a folder. If an item stays in the inbox for more than 24 hours, it starts to rot. It becomes ghost data, something that haunts your subconscious because it's unfinished business. You look at it every day, feel a tiny bit of guilt, and then close the app. That's a leak in your system.
Most people use their inbox as a someday folder, which is basically code for never. You're treating your entry point like a final destination. That's a logic error. An inbox is a transit station, not a parking lot. Everything must move, or everything dies.
The para-truth is that your folders should be based on actionability, not topic. You don't have a folder for photography, you have a folder for the real estate shoot you're doing on Tuesday. One is a library, the other is a project. One is dead, the other is alive. When you sort by action, the clutter disappears. You aren't looking at a mountain of stuff anymore. You're looking at a list of moves. You move from being overwhelmed by information to being focused on implementation. It's a shift in your internal operating system.
If you can't act on it, it doesn't belong in your active space. It's that simple. But we've been trained to keep everything just in case. That just in case is exactly what's keeping you stuck in the mud. You're carrying a backpack full of rocks.
It's time to stop hoarding and start deploying. Your inbox should be empty by the end of the day, every single day. Not because you did the work, but because you put the work in its proper place. That's the first law of the digital architect.
Chapter 2.
A project is a series of tasks linked to a specific goal with a deadline. Finishing a client edit is a project. Building a new finance app is a project. Projects have a finish line, and they are the only things that should be in your active focus. An area is a long-term responsibility that requires a standard of performance over time. Your health isn't a project, it's an area. Your finances are an area. There is no finish line for these, only a continuous flow of maintenance and small upgrades. Most people confuse the two. They treat health like a project, go hard for 3 weeks and then finish it, only to fall back into the chaos. Or they treat a client edit like an area, letting it drag on for months without a clear end. That's a system glitch. When you separate projects from areas, your brain relaxes. You know exactly what has a deadline and what just needs cleaning. You stop feeling guilty about your health because you realize it's a marathon, not a sprint. You focus your deep work on the projects. Your life OS needs this distinction to function. If everything is a project, you'll burn out in a week. If everything is an area, you'll never actually ship anything. You need the sprint of the project and the stability of the area to stay in the game. Think of your projects as the moves you're making on the board, and your areas as the board itself. You need both to play the game, but you only move one at a time. This is how you avoid the timeline anxiety we talked about in video 5. By categorizing your reality this way, you create mental silos. You aren't thinking about your taxes while you're editing a wedding video. You're in the project folder and the area folder is closed. This is the logic of a sovereign mind. Chapter 3. Resources are the library of your life. This is where you put the golden knowledge, the stuff that interests you but doesn't have a deadline. It's the color grading tutorials, the Swahili grammar notes, the strategic storytelling psychology. Resources are the only place where hoarding is actually allowed, but only if it's organized. If you just dump links here, it becomes a graveyard. You need to treat your resources like a research lab for your future self. You're building a vault of high-value signal. The problem is that people put resources in their project folders. Suddenly, you're trying to edit a video, but you're distracted by a cool article on AI automation. That's a focus leak.
Resources should be invisible until you actually need them. A resource is only valuable if it's searchable. If you can't find it in 10 seconds, you might as well not have it. This is why we use tags and meta-netted instead of deep-nested folders. You want a flat system that lets you retrieve data at the speed of thought.
Your resource folder is your internal Wikipedia. It's the data you vetted and approved. When a new project starts, you reach into resources, pull out the relevant info, and move it into the project folder. You aren't starting from scratch, you're starting from your own history.
This creates a knowledge compound effect. The more you learn, the faster your future projects become. You're building a competitive moat made of organized information. You aren't just a creator, you're a curator of your own expertise. But remember, resources are passive. They don't make you money, they just support the people who do. Don't spend all day organizing your resources when you should be shipping your projects. The library is for the architect, but the house is for the client. Chapter 4. Archives are where the ghosts of finished projects go to rest. Every time you finish a video, every time you close a deal, every time a resource becomes irrelevant, move it to the archive. Out of sight, out of mind, but still in the system. Most people keep their finished work in their active folders. It's like keeping a trophy on your desk until you can't see the computer screen anymore. It creates visual noise and cognitive drag. It reminds you of the past when you should be focused on the future.
The archive is the only way to keep your Life OS fast. A system with 1,000 active folders is a slow system. A system with 5 active projects and 995 archived folders is a lightning-fast system. You're clearing the cache of your digital life every time you archive.
Archives are also your safety net. You never delete anything, you just retire it. If a client comes back 6 months later asking for a revision, you pull it from the archive in seconds. You look like a genius, but you're just a guy with a good filing system. There is a psychological click that happens when you move a project to the archive. It's a signal to your brain that the deep work for that goal is complete. It frees up the RAM for the next move. It's a ritual of completion that most people miss. If your digital space is cluttered with old stuff, you'll feel old too. You'll feel weighted down by your history. Archiving is an act of digital minimalism. You're keeping the essence but removing the weight. You're staying lean and agile for the next climb. Your archives are the history of your growth. One day you'll look back and see the path you took. But for now, they need to stay in the basement. Keep the active space sacred. If it's done, it's gone. Move it to the vault and don't look back. Chapter 5. The real magic of Para isn't the folders, it's the processing ritual. Every Sunday, you go through your inbox. You don't do the work, you just sort the work. This is the architecture phase, where you decide where every bit of data lives. Is this an active project? Is this a long-term area? Is this a resource for later? Or is it just junk for the archive? When you make these decisions once a week, you don't have to make them every morning. You're building a pre-decided life. Most Gen Z entrepreneurs fail because they spend all morning figuring out what to do. By the time they decide, their willpower is already gone. A digital architect knows what to do before they even wake up because the system has already sorted the input. This is zero-touch logic. You want your system to tell you the next move so you don't have to think. Thinking is expensive. Execution is cheap. You want to save your thinking for the big strategy, not for where did I put that file. When you trust your parastructure, the anxiety of the inbox disappears. You know that nothing is lost. You know that everything has a home. You move from a reactive state to a proactive state. You aren't catching balls, you're throwing them. This is the sovereign engine in action. It's a clean, quiet machine that processes the chaos of the world into the order of your goals. You've moved from being a hoarder to being a systems engineer, and an engineer always has the best tools. The Para truth is that organization isn't about being neat, it's about being dangerous. It's about being able to deploy your knowledge at a moment's notice to solve a problem. Now that the storage is fixed, we need to talk about the tax you're still paying. You've built the vault, and the inbox is finally empty. But even with a perfect filing system, why does it feel like your deep work sessions are still getting interrupted by 1,000 tiny ghosts? If you have 100 open tabs in your browser and your brain, your Life OS will still crash. Check the previous video to see why your schedule is a lie.